Here we are back with another piping hot, fresh episode of the Cyber Metal Podcast. I'm Omar Segurima, joined by Allison Lederman.
Hi, welcome back. This is Allison Lederman, though I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer, but we may give you some sound legal wisdom that we have learned over the last 20 years of litigation, working with businesses and organizations and helping them with their risk management. And I'm currently the CEO of Accolade, a cybersecurity certification and tool for GRC assessment platform.
Excited for that. Very excited for that. That last part, it's gonna be pretty.
Oh my gosh, we were playing in it today. Mirror IQ is just leaps and bounds, and we were doing another David push more into dev, and the assessment piece of it, along with the AI security, nothing else like it on the market. Genuinely,
I can't wait for it to hit and get in there and start doing not just
couple weeks.
Exactly, not just a president. Just I'm also a client. Remember those old school right there.
I'm not just the president. I'm also a member.
I'm a member, right? It was the hair club for men. I can never forget. There was all those cool infomercials. Speaking of somebody who definitely would be the president of any hair club that I would be a fan of, Jose Toledo, welcome. You're joining us. Give us a little background on where you hail from here.
Yeah, man. I didn't know what I was going to say, but hearing Allison, So Jose Toledo, I'm a consultant. I'm a consultant, not your consultant. I'm going to start telling people that because I feel like everyone's like, dude, tell me about AI, tell me about security. What do you think? And I got to start.
Especially the holidays.
Right? I'm a consultant, not your consultant. I won't fix your computer.
Feel free to use it. It's true. It's we'll give you some suggestion and guidance based on my wisdom, but each scenario is unique, and you need to have a consultant work with you in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm in the cybersecurity consultant. I'm mostly focused on strategic cybersecurity now. I'm on the Mandiant team at Google. Here representing myself though, not Google. Prior to that, I was in OT cybersecurity consulting for a couple of years. And then prior to that was in the defense space for about 10 years between military service and defense contracting. I've kind of done most of the cyber things from like network administration, working in data centers, to some pen testing, kind of all the way around the board, some teaching. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I love a jack of all trades.
Yeah, master of none for sure.
Oh, I don't know. I bet you they would disagree. After you find that place, after you've touched enough and you see how they all fit, it really gives you that opportunity to say, but this is what I really like and what I really want to focus on after you've touched enough things. I was that way in law. I've touched a lot of different things and finally went, this is where I want to be in my space, right? Which was that business side of things. We're excited to have you here today, and we definitely want to hear more about that experience. Where we were going with today is in honor of Veterans Day that just passed this week. We wanted to talk about what does that transition really look like for a lot of people going from military to civilian life. What are those challenges in that professional space? What are the things they can look forward to? And really, what is it they should know as they're considering making that transition? And then after they have made that transition, what are those success stories for you that you've had or that you've seen in the space, and recommendations? And we'll just kind of start from there.
Yeah, let's see, where do I start? I'll start in the middle. My start in cybersecurity was probably unconventional in comparison to the way a lot of people do it. Like, I did start in cyber in the military, but it was like an IT start and then kind of a unique position where I was in the Air National Guard as a full-time member of the Air National Guard. And so I did that, and then it was kind of a newer thing in the military at the time, kind of being spread across places. And so a lot of it was really self-teaching, kind of figuring out how things worked, what things were going to be happening. There wasn't like the flood of courses, right? And so I want to like disclaimer it by saying very unconventional start. And so I got into it with defense contracting, right? And so I kind of got into initially more of a GRC type role that ended up seeming like somebody who was just going to like be around to reset passwords and kind of set initial like cybersecurity policy. And then very quickly they realized like, oh, we need somebody to do vulnerability management, and we need somebody to do patching, and we need somebody who's going to enforce policy and build training. And well, you're just one guy, but hey, you got to do this, and you got to do this for multiple sites, and you got to do this for multiple networks. And so very unconventional. And so I'll say some of the things that probably helped the most are the military has this, especially if you're kind of in the military in kind of the recent GWAT era, like the Global War on Terror era, do more with less mentality, right? And so there's like a lot of really terrible sayings that I'm going to try to like interweave into the conversation that probably like won't make you cringe, but they'll make somebody cringe if they've been in the military in the last 10 years, just because it's like, trying to catch somebody with something. And that's one of them, like do more with less. And so the ability to be like one man, one woman tool is probably a really big thing, right? And so one of the big things I'll say that makes things really hard for people, I'll start there, is the power to translate what you do in the military. So my story and how I got in probably doesn't matter as much for somebody who's going to make the transition, right? Because it's very different for anyone who's going to do it. I would say the biggest issue that I see with people, and so like, at my organization, I'm involved with like our veterans network and our veterans mentorship. I encourage you, like, just as an aside, it's my problem. I'll tangent every chance I get. As an aside, if you're looking at an organization and you really want to target an industry, find a couple of top companies that you really like, and then find out if they have like veterans, like networks that will do mentorship for people who want to get in. Because like the organization that I'm with, we do that. That's something we do. We host it once a year for a week where you can get a hold of people, and we happily will talk to you about what we do. And we host weeks where we do those kinds of things. But we come into these problems where you have someone who's going to say, hey, I was in charge of, J6 with $10 million and I worked on insert 50 million acronyms with military jargon here. And you get kind of one of two things. You get, A, you're going to lose everybody in the jargon, or you get two, everybody's like, well, you're kind of just making everything up. And so I think a really big part here is like making quantifiable results. I know it's funny, right? But like, the amount of times I meet people who are like, oh, you're just embellishing your career, guy. And it's like, I think you find a lot of people in the military who are silent professionals and rather just not market their competencies.
Sure.
So we have seen that.
Yeah.
We're a company founded by veterans, and one of the founders is a veteran. My CTO is a veteran. And one of the things our marketing guy came in and said, look, as we're building this, you need to flaunt your successes and your, what you've accomplished so that people understand why they want to work with you. And they have conveyed to us, they're like, look, it's really hard when we were trained to be part of a team, not flaunt who we are, right? We need to be exactly like you mentioned earlier, right? Do more with less. We do all the things, and we just do the job. And I'm like, but there's a value to that and all the things that you have done and the successes you did have, and finding a way to translate that into business speak out of the acronyms and the legal, not the legal jargon, that too, but the military jargon, right? Into things that businesses understand, I think is huge for people trying to make that transition and taking their resumes and putting it into, and not being afraid to flaunt those successes and putting it into business language that they're going to understand, to show that you are going to be valuable, because you could literally be put anywhere because you will find a solution, right? I think that do more with less, though it seems like it's mostly a military thing. I mean, businesses are doing that all the time now as they keep cutting people and they're adding more. I mean, I've been in roles where I've carried 4 different positions at the same time. And does it mean I'm doing all of them perfectly? No. Am I doing them all enough to keep things moving for a startup? Yes. Right? Because that's all the money that there might be in that organization, depending on. And so that is a skill that translates very directly into a lot of businesses. So it is something that can translate, right, in that way to get you a position. So sorry, I didn't mean to derail that, but I think you were making a really good point there.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's kind of the natural transition or segue point there is, it's looking at it from a team. I think you kind of get the individual beat out of you is probably the best way to see it, right? Like there's no, especially like based off your branch of service. I'm, coming from the Air Force as a background, we're more corporate suit wearing types. So it's very different. But, you see, like I work with people who were in the Marines or the Army, the Navy, and they very much are a lot less individuals and very much more a team mentality. And so it's harder for them to individually take credit for things like that, right? I think for me personally, like one of the hardest, and this is like something I still struggle with myself, right, in my career. And so like I've been very fortunate. My organization has like executive coaches that like I can I meet with and just like try to help myself through stuff like this. But like huge issue that I have, like recently went through like performance evaluations, promotion boards, things like that. And like my boss sits me down and he's like, tell me about what you do and like what value you bring. And I'm like, this is the value I bring. And he's like, I think you might do more than that, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I think I might do more than that. And it's hard sometimes for me to translate that. And I think I used to work with a guy who I still talk to quite a bit. And he probably, ironically, Canadian man who I'll just shout out Santosh.
Yeah, I was still going to say Santosh, man. Yes,
Santosh,
sir.
a great Canadian man named Santosh, who his father served in the military in India. And so for him, I think he had a very different view of the military. It was nice for me to see, I think, the perspective of someone whose parents served in the military who wasn't in the United States, right? Very different perspective on what the military was and kind of the experience that they brought. But the marketability of things, and for him having been around the industry for a while, and for him to say, as someone who's never done it, but kind of grew up around it, this is the value I think you bring, right? This is kind of the X factor that you have. And I think for me, it was like things like emphasizing soft skills. For instance, when I was interviewing for my current role, a really big thing for me was like, it was down to the wire. Like we went through all of our, Silicon Valley interview cycle, 4 or 5 interviews. It comes down to like, hey, the VP is going to be the tiebreaker. We're just letting you know, you have 30 minutes. It's unstructured. This is going to be like how you decide, like it's the Hunger Games, like may the odds ever be in your favor. Figure it out. And I walked into that call not thinking I was going to get hired because I thought that I showed up looking like a goof. And I was like, okay, well, what happens here? And she's like, is there anything you want to say at all before we close the call? And I blanked for like 30 seconds. And I was like, I know I like ran through everything in my head that I've ever done. And it was like, everyone's probably sat through the same interview prep that I've sat through and read the same LinkedIn posts that I've read and all the other things. And so I'm just going to say the things that I probably wouldn't ever say. And it was, I'm going to bring something unique to you. I'm going to bring experience that I've led teams in extremely high stress environments. I have led very technical teams with very strong type A personalities. I understand what it means to have to lead in multidiscipline environments and have a mission driven goal and not have a good result at the end. And I understand what it means to just be pointed in a direction and be told to figure something out. So if that's someone that you want, I'm your man. But if that's not someone you want, don't hire me. And that's how we ended the interview. And I ended the call and I was like, why did I say that? I don't know. And
but I love it.
Talking.
Me too.
Yeah.
We've been friends.
That's a key differentiator.
It's such a huge differentiator. And Jose, I was in the cheering section, right? Throughout that whole process. First time I've heard you say this part of that process. I don't think you outright covered it. And number two, which I think is more emblematic of what you're saying here, the thing you're trying to work through and trying to use the coaching to get past, is probably maybe one of 2 or 3 times I've ever heard you talk about yourself that way. And we've taught classes together where you've absolutely, like, there's been situations where I think I've lobbed the ball to you, so to speak, to like say, hey, yeah, I'm a technical BAMF. No. Every time, I think I remember we were teaching together and you were always either hyping me up, hyping our other, co-teacher up. The shout out to Danielle there, hyping up what the students were bringing to the table. I think I've known you for how many years now? Like going on 3, 4, 5, right?
5 years.
I've almost never heard you talk about yourself this way. And it's true. I want to say, little disclaimer along the bottom. I'll add the graphic later. It's actually true. That type of skills you bring to the table.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I would say one of the big issues that I had is, so I'll say, like, in preparation for this, I sat down and was like, what would I want to hear if I was going to say this? And I don't know that I was necessarily as prepared. I kind of mumbled for like the first 5 minutes of this, like trying to figure out what I was going to say. Initially, it was going to be like an introduction about my career and all those other things that I was, like, that's not what Jose would want to hear if Jose was sitting through this. So Jose wouldn't care about what Jose did. Jose would care about actionable changes he could make. And yeah, I think the big thing comes down to, like, I had to do it eventually, right? And I had to fight for myself and figure out what my differentiator would have been. And I think, I think that's the first time I've actually ever told that story outside of, like, to my wife. And yeah, I think it's interesting. There's like, I've picked up and dropped journaling throughout my life, and like I've written things down that I've heard, and I'm like one of those people who like picks it up and goes. And so like I've got like a slew of cliches I've picked up. And so it's like something I always repeat to people, especially in the military, like being a guardsman, like in very much a mentorship capacity now as like a NCO at my unit, a non-commissioned officer at my unit, with like some of the younger airmen. And so helping them find jobs, and like I was once in your position, and kind of having these conversations around what would I do again with all the information that I know if I was you. And so one of the biggest things I come back to, somebody told me when I was very young in my career, was like, never use someone else's yardstick to measure your life, right? And so I always come back to think about that, because like I said, very unconventional entry into the field. Mostly a screw up, I would say, like dropped out of college 3 times. But no, I'm serious, right? Like dropped out of college 3 times. I joined the military because I didn't know how I was going to pay for it.
But are you going to say the other part here, or do I have to come in and say, yeah,
I came back from it, I guess, mostly.
It came back from it, and like, what are you doing now? I don't know if you want to, right? Like,
I mean, I do a lot of stuff now, I just do stuff,
but I'm saying specifically for the, see how hard it is to get this out of you.
I know.
Now?
Well, he mentioned who he works for earlier on. He said which company he's at.
That's a big deal, but also like just in the school part, brother. You're out there in the middle of PhD classes. So you might have, don't matter how you started, bro.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'll say this, right? Like a lot of screw ups to get where I was. And I think I was very fortunate, right? Like I was really lucky. I had like a high school class that would show me like John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I remember like listening to these and being like, this is crazy. Like, this is really it. But I remember listening to things and hearing like the law of timing and how like guys like me could just end up in situations where like I could screw up so many things in my life, but be in the right place at the right time and things work out for me. But I'll say I dropped out of college multiple times. I made mistakes in my career. But I think the common denominator is I've always worked hard. I've not always been the smartest guy in the room, and I've always been proud of that, but I've always worked hard.
You know what the other common denominator is, though?
Discipline. Sorry?
You learned how to come back from it. So it's not just a screw up. It's an opportunity to learn how to do it differently next time.
Yep.
And you did, obviously. I mean, you went through and you made different choices, and, you opened new doors and you found a new way to get where you are now. And I think I'm a bit of a believer that times we're not ready for certain opportunities at different stages of our life until we get through those lessons that we need to learn. So had you had the opportunity you have now 20 years ago, you might not have been the same person, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
And so maybe you needed to make certain choices and then learn from those choices to be able to be in the position that you're in right now.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Something I've kind of like come back to, and this is maybe like the overarching theme of maybe my end game, right? Is for the conversation is through the mistakes, through like the hard work, through like the perseverance. Like I always aim to just be like the hardest worker in the room and like not talk about it, right? Like, to just do things. And so another kind of Santosh-ism that I've crafted over time is like crafting my story and like knowing my narrative, like knowing what my end game is, but like overall understanding like what my narrative is and like how that fits into like the greater scheme of things. And so I can't just be I'm not just the guy who like comes in and fits in like the standard puzzle piece. And like, I need to be able to be okay with that, right? Like, I'm not the guy who does like, I don't just show up and solve problems, right? Like I can follow processes, I can do root cause analysis, but I can also take all of that, throw that all out the window and then just like totally get something done because I understand that like all plans fail on first contact, and I think it's really driving that value that you bring is really going to be something interesting. Another part that I think is really complicated is maybe just, I know, it's like for me, for a lot of people is like the networking aspect of it. Like I'm terrible at networking. Like I have like maybe another interesting transition point. I don't know. I read a blog, right? And I just like, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy learning. I have spent, try to take as much time to learn and teach as I can. I like listen to audiobooks when I ride my bike. Like I try to be a lifelong learner and just learn things that interest me, right? But with that, I try to share the things that I learned because like I'm very passionate about cybersecurity in my industry. And so like I try to share. So like I read a blog about just like introductory cybersecurity concepts and things I've learned. But then I have like an issue where, I'm trying to, I talk to Omar about this all the time. I try to straddle the line of like, how do you market yourself without coming off like an AI robot who's just like pumping out the same content that's filled with emojis, if this, then that, like, yeah, You know what I mean?
Gently hit that subscribe button, right? Like
yeah,
the
like and subscribe,
right?
smash that subscribe button,
hit
like,
the bell,
hit that notification bell. Like,
and that's the sad thing, right? Because what's AI based off of? Human blogs,
people.
right?
Yeah.
So it's designed to sound the way that we already were writing. So now we have to change our writing style to sound not like the AI that's taking it from us. I mean,
it's too meta. It's too meta for me, Allison.
It's too meta.
You broke my brain.
I broke brains on a Friday night.
It's really. I'm white knuckling and I'm trying to be super present, but it's very true. Where then where do you go? Because I've had legitimate output that I put out there, being like, "Oh, you AI this up." I swear, I will tell you. Like, I think Allison knows. Jose, I'm pretty upfront. If I did, I say, the seed for this was, and I might have judged it. But how do we? How do you differentiate? We do talk about this a lot. Where but what I've noticed with you, Jose, like it's even because you were, thankfully, like I can go back to you were a guest on another podcast I do. It sounds different. I feel like you've definitely done, whether it's the journaling, whether it's the, getting through things, whether it's where you are, or you got your feet under you. It feels like a bit more, and it's great to see. But it also, you are as advertised. Because the stuff you're talking about now, you used to talk about when we would teach together and try to impart on the students, but you're living it too, which is neat to see. You're not just the client. You're not just the president. You're the client. You're eating your own dog food, as they say. You're trying and working and grappling with these ideas, which is awesome to see.
Yeah.
And that genuineness will come through. I mean, that's the thing is, if you're saying I want to differentiate from AI, if you're just being authentic to who you are, and honest with that learning process, and you're just sharing that learning process, AI can't replicate that human experience.
And that tone.
It can try to come,
authenticity. Right.
Yeah.
I think an interesting perspective that I've come across in my career is experience. The military gives you a lot of responsibility at very young ages. So going back on Omar's point, right? Like all the storytelling, all the things, right? Guys like him that I've worked with have heard the stories in person as I've kind of taught things and kind of done things, and my coworkers have kind of heard things and taught things. And so if I write about them and people have no context to me and it's kind of just something that goes online, somebody could read it and be like, this guy's just pulling stuff off the internet, right? And maybe no context to understanding that. The perfect example I like to give is the U.S. military is one of the few places in the world where a 19-year-old could be a year out of high school working on a multi-million-dollar aircraft by themselves, right? Yep. I have been very fortunate in my life to have been around the world doing my job, right? Like probably 23 countries doing my job, not personal travel, just doing my job between the military, mostly cyber related stuff. And it's amazing to say. And so to pack that in before I've turned 30 is really interesting for most people, I think. And so I can come into a room and tell stories and people have this conversation. And it's an issue that I have with people sometimes where they're like, interesting. I get the assumption that people are like, oh, you're in your mid to late 30s or things like that. But then people find out how old I am. And oftentimes it's not an issue, but sometimes I get the skepticism, right? I used to work at a company where people were skeptical because of my age. And so I go back to guys like Santosh who were like, you have to get past it. You have to not mention it to people. You have to get past it. And you have to some people just aren't going to understand the amount of responsibility that's bestowed upon you at a young age. At 2021, the military might have the expectation that you're going to be sent to the middle of a combat zone and you're going to be put in charge of 5 or 6 people and their livelihood. And you're just the person that's in charge and you're the day-to-day, right? You're the manager, you're the leader. And that's not something that you're going to normally give a 21, 20-year-old, right? Because a lot of 20, 21-year-olds are in college. And so being able to find a way to translate that, it's like walking a fine line, I think, because oftentimes, once again, if somebody has no experience, it's just well, I think you probably just talk a really good game, right? Maybe you're just a really good used car salesman. So I think, it's probably just a really weird balance to walk.
Well,
right?
and I'm glad you're sharing that, right? Because I think people that are making that transition from military to civilian life, and they're experiencing office politics for the first time, and they're experiencing where they've had to make, like you said, life and death decisions for other people. And yet you've got a bunch of people fighting over the coffee filters.
Yeah.
Like, it's how do you, and I think it helps for people that are going to get into that life to understand you're not the odd man out, or person out, I should say, right? You're not the odd person out, even though it feels like that. There are other people that have come from military life to civilian life and have made that transition and felt the same oddness or weirdness because not everybody has the same life experiences, right? Like you said, there's some people that have never faced trauma in their lives and they went happily with a family that could afford whatever, and they go from high school to college to job, and they've not had to make important decisions, right? You've had people that have had childhood trauma who then had to earn scholarships and had to work multiple jobs. Those same people, right, that have had that trauma-based experience, which military, I think, would fit, especially if you're anywhere near a battlefield or you've had to do cyber of, say, forensics, and you find stuff you really don't want to have to relive, which Jason Dion, who is our founder of our company, he was in the Navy 20 plus years and went all around the world and saw all the things you would never want to even have to describe to anyone. I mean, that's a whole trauma experience, right, in and of itself. And so to be in that same office pool with people who haven't had to make those tough decisions, who haven't had to see those kinds of things or experiences in their life, it's a weird disconnect. So what kind of things, you mentioned journaling, you mentioned the executive coach, what kind of things would help with that kind of emotional transition from military life to civilian life as you're entering the workforce where you might be surrounded with a bunch of people with no life experience?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's probably something I probably wouldn't have remembered to bring up, but it's something I sometimes struggle with even now. And I'd say I've probably been, like fully in the civilian world, like apart from being a guardsman, like I'd say I'm fully entrenched in the civilian world for probably 3.5 years now. And it's an interesting transition point because I'll say one of the biggest issues that you find is the military has for the most part, a very big, like no excuses environment, right? Like kind of the whole concept of like, okay, you're late, right? Like for the most part, I don't care why you're late. I just want you to tell me you're late. You're sorry you're late. You're going to do your best for it not to happen again. And the conversation's over. Are you okay as a person? Depending on your branch of service, and you're in the Marines, they probably don't care. Like if you're in the Army, you're probably going to like fill sandbags. But like in the Air Force, I'd ask if everything in your life is okay, if it's becoming a habit, and kind of transition from there, right? And I think because of that, that creates a culture of like a no BS culture, right? Mm-hmm. And so very much there's no fluff, right? Like we feed information very directly. There's no reason to sugarcoat. And so I think that like for me, and I know for a lot of my like counterparts I've worked with who are like veterans, it's an issue that you run into a lot because you don't see it as an issue. And in fact, what you do is you feel like an outcast because you feel like you're hurting people's feelings. And so I think what it is trying to be more aware of your surroundings. And for me, I think it was really like finding a trusted advisor maybe, or like a trusted coworker that you could kind of like speak to and kind of have them as your sanity check, right? Like, are the things I'm saying coming off the wrong way? Like, let me know if we're ever in a meeting, like shoot me a message on the side and let me know, like, tone it back a little. Like, are things wrong? Things like that. Besides that, I would say a lot of it is coming back to the coaching aspect of things, right? I have been very open with my management about it and kind of talked to people, but I've also had to and actually, I think it was Omar was one of the first people who talked to me about this. He was like, how about you see it as, it was because of, I don't know if I should name people you work with, but it was because of your Air Force coworker. Yes. It was him. And you were like, one of the biggest things that we appreciate about him is that he is that way. And we've asked him not to be different. And so I've had to challenge people and say, maybe you do want me to be that guy. Maybe you do want somebody on the team to be that person who comes in and just says no. And I'm okay with coming in and telling a client no. And I'm okay with coming in and challenging people.
I was going to ask if there's any organizations that offer that kind of, I would say group training almost of, look, we all come with different experiences and different voices and different gifts and different ways of presenting the information. And instead of just assuming because someone is direct that they're angry or whatever, maybe ask and inquire a bit further because everybody, and I say this from my own experience, right? I tend to be, as I have conversations, I'm obviously a bit more long-winded. When I'm writing emails, people paid me by the hour to do the work. I try to get in and get out and get over. And I can tell you when I relayed that same way within an office environment, especially being a woman, it was not taken well. She's being this, she's, the B word, she's too aggressive, she's too curt, she's too that. And I don't have enough time to sit here and quite go, I'm going to tone police myself on every email. Thanks to Chat GPT, I hate to say it, it tends to take a white man tone. And so if I need a customer service, like I put the info of these are the basic facts without giving away anything that's business secrets or whatever,
Sure.
could you make it sound a little nicer? I use it to help me do that because I don't have time to tone police myself, right? That type of stuff. So I am curious though, if there are organizations though that help encourage people to, as they say in Ted Lasso, be curious a bit more and not just take how you're saying it, in a particular way, because maybe to help you on this part and anyone else in the military, remember when they approach you about, oh, you're this, it's through their own filter.
Correct.
It's not that you did something necessarily wrong. It's how they perceive it based on their experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about any organizations necessarily that I've seen or worked with.
Then maybe they should. No.
Yeah.
No,
so
I mean,
yeah, I think one thing I come back to, and maybe this is a hot take that I get beat up for, but I think like with a lot of things, like in cyber, but I think veterans communities are just very similar. You see it just like you do with most groups. You get groups who are well-intentioned and, they do low cost or free services like that. But then I also see services like I always feel like I have to do way too much research to know if I'm going to refer somebody to a service that's like ends up being a hoax that's just like a money grab. And
or
so
snake oil.
I haven't.
Yeah.
You see, I think another conversation Omar and I have had recently about like referring people to like cybersecurity beginner courses because we're concerned about like how quality I almost feel like I have to be the guy to go through it. Right. And so like, if I wasn't in the middle of PhD school and like I didn't have family medical issues and like other things I was dealing with, I would be burning through certs. Like if you sat through my LinkedIn and looked at my cert history, you'd see I was an Omar at a point, right? Like burning through certs and burning through courses. Like I was scrolling through the Accolade website too after he was telling me about it. And I was like, dude, I've said, shout out to Jason Dion, man. I've sat through some of his courses for certs. Like, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the big things. I remember when I first linked up with Allison, I think that came out of my mouth. I said, wait a second. There was a time in my career where I was learning. Jason taught me all ITIL, hands down. Like the entirety until Rug pulled me a little bit and said, no, you can't get master, which I wanted so bad just because of the martial arts stuff. I was like, yes. And then I think I got there and said, no, wait, there's 3 more that we're reconfiguring. And I said, forget you guys. Jason taught me what I needed to know. I'm going to keep it moving and we're going to go service delivery. But you're right, where, we talk about this a lot, like, because we don't want to, because you're putting your reputation out there too. If they come to you as, hey, here's a guide, and also we want to be the guys that we needed. I think that's been a lot of our talks where we didn't have this. So we want to be, hey, like, cut through the noise. But then God forbid you send them to somebody and they're going, you know what? If you throw me $1,000, I'll make you a cyber guru 22 days. And I said, there's nothing worth getting good at that you can get good at in that short amount of time, regardless of the money. Sadly, it's there. Like, there's
a lot of it.
And a downturn in economies too, almost turn it up a notch in terms of that savior. Like, here, just do this and you'll get a job. It's hard, bro. It's hard.
Well, that's the history of education, right? When there's a downturn, what do people do? They go back to school. They try to get their certifications. They try to get the extra thing to make sure they can stand out in the workforce so that when it hires again, they can stand out ahead of the crowd. And so they market to that, right? I mean, that's the thing is I think the more we have social media and the more we have access to this stuff, and now with AI kind of, reading and learning from human behavior and everything else, what works, right? And it knows at least what those current trends are and able to do that. What resources, if any, have you found just in general from either of you that have you gone through? So like, for example, our chief marketing and communications officer, even before he joined Accolade, has always been a member of FAVOB. So my brother, my father, and my grandfather were all military. 2 were in the Navy. 1 was a Coast Guard reservist. And so we've always supported veterans, right? That type of stuff. That is a thing of our company as well. So Michael was still supports the FAVOB, which is Florida Association of Veteran-Owned Businesses. And so they do work with local organizations and people transitioning to, hey, make your own business, become an entrepreneur, get the skills and the counseling and all those different types of resources. I know our friend Paul Cummings over at Whole Cyber Human Initiative right, loves to work with the Boots to Cybersecurity and the DoD skill bridge programs and trying to get people to transition and provide those resources and training and making that type of stuff available as well. What things have you gentlemen come across in doing either your own experience or in doing the research that has been helpful or would be helpful for those that are either currently transitioning or thinking about making that transition from military to civilian life?
So I know a lot of the like civilian transition type companies I used when I started looking at certifications and stuff. A lot of the stuff I was sending people, I found out recently, like hasn't existed recently. So like I know one of like it. So I haven't been using it for a bit, right? So a lot of the companies kind of just aren't around. So I know one of the big things I was pushing people towards for a while, and I don't know how big the program is, but like the Onward to Opportunity program from Syracuse University, I know for a while was funded by, if not Starbucks, the founder or the CEO of Starbucks. And I know that was really cool. I got like my CISP training through them. That was really a good one. I always push people towards the SANS Cyber Academy. I know they have like a specific military one. Besides that, I think most of the other like cyber specific or like military specific organizations I've kind of gone towards haven't really been a thing. I think Omar's worked with a few. I think on the side, maybe kind of just to quickly backpedal on like the communications aspect of things as like a piece I probably forgot to mention. I'm a huge advocate for AI for most, if not all things, if you fact check it. But I think especially for like the personal communication aspect of things, like I said, I have an issue with it sometimes at work still where like I doubt myself and like how I'm going to come across when I say something. For the most part, I have a relatively self-deprecating humor that I come across all the time in a professional capacity. I'll sit at a C-suite with, chief counsel for a company and I'm going to tell them, hey, look, you probably requested the best guy and they sent me. So welcome. Like
I've seen this.
That's how I open a meeting.
I've seen you do this. And it's like when it hits because it's disarming. It brings people in. It's a lot
when
of
it doesn't, it sucks.
But when it doesn't, it's people go.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is.
One of my team does that all the time, and it's always self-deprecating. And we're all like, we already know you're the most brilliant dude in the room, so don't just go. It's not going to land well. We know.
Most of the time they don't know me, so it's great.
And you can slip, but do you see?
But it's your first impression, so work on that.
I've seen the terror in people's eyes. Be like, oh, hold on.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, and so I think it helps because usually I have a pretty decent introduction that I've kind of had to rehearse for myself. Like I've had to rehearse like these points sound relatively impressive to the average crowd of things I've done in my career. And then I'll kind of hit them with a little bit of self-deprecating humor and then kind of go from there. And I've kind of rehearsed that through things like AI, artificial intelligence for like interview prep and things like that. And even with like interactions with clients or I'm also the person who was like, your emails are a little too direct with clients sometimes. I was the guy who would receive an email and just respond done, right? And people would be like, that's not cool. You can't do that. And I'm like, why not?
Same.
Why is he mad?
And so
why is he mad? Why is he hate me?
Yeah, exactly. And I always go to AI.
Done. Yeah. But
Correct.
I guess the kids in this generation, I hate to say the kids, but this current generation that I think my son is part of, right? If you hit done with a period, they're like, you mad. Because it's so harsh. It's just period. We're done.
You got to hit them with an emoji.
I didn't mean it that way.
You got to soften it somehow.
Lowercase.
Lowercase is
no
a big one.
No lie here.
Oh, that
no
was,
caps.
Yeah.
No caps. No.
Why is he yelling? Why is he yelling? Why is he
right
so
now,
mad?
my kid is going to go cringe when he hears all of this right now.
But this is great.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I couldn't get my sister to listen to this if I tried, so I'm fine.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. If I ever have like conflicts and things, I mean, a really, really hard part for me is the organization I work for has like a very open feedback policy. So like we do peer feedback regularly. And so when I started, I was like, all right, whatever. I'm just supposed to like say nice things about people. And then I had a manager reach out to me and say, hey, is this really how you feel about this person? I sent this to you because I had a feeling that you have not had positive experiences with them. And I said, no, I totally don't think that this person is very good at their job. And he said, you should put that in writing. And I said, I don't have anything nice to say. And he says, well, you shouldn't say nice things then. And I was like, okay. So then I was like, Gemini, help me not say nice things professionally. Because that's not how I would put this.
I like how you stayed on brand too, by the way. I caught that, and that's
how I
off to you. That you stayed on brand, Gemini.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I get a free professional subscription to it, so it works for me. Yeah.
Use the tools you got. Right. I'm
I
with
use
you.
the tools I got.
That's right.
But yeah.
But that's an excellent point. That is a gift in and of itself of being clear in what it is without being a jerk in how you say it. I was in an opportunity, a very large law firm, and they had said, well, what's wrong with the department? And there was a lot wrong with the department. Just as and there were some inappropriate, potentially other behaviors that were not great. And instead of, this person, this, that, and the other, I said, you know what? Give me 24 hours and I will get you something. And instead I sat down and wrote basically a business plan on how to fix kind of some of the issues without, and they knew without me having to say this person did X, Y, and Z, they know it was top down. Right. And so I said, these are the issues that can be fixed, and here's how I would put this into play, right? And eventually it ended up being, well, good, now you go do that. That's cool. Thanks. But it was a way of addressing it without pointing a finger specifically at the person and saying, well, did you know they were doing X, Y, and Z? It was, if time were focused in these areas, this would benefit the department kind of thing, and just changing it into something that I was more comfortable with, because I get that potential discomfort there of like, and at the same time being directive, this person just might, I always looked at it as, they might be better in a role that works on X, Y, and Z skills. That seems to suit what they're doing better than what they're currently doing. Like I definitely took the opportunity as a manager when I saw somebody struggling in an area, and after trying to work with them, if that just wasn't connecting for them, finding something else that might better suit what I did realize their skills were. And then if that didn't work and we didn't have it, well, then sometimes it's just not a good fit overall.
Gotta walk the plank at
But sometimes you're putting a square peg in a round hole. So
exactly.
Why not move them to something that makes a bit more sense? There are ways to kind of take that where, okay, this isn't working, and maybe there is an opportunity just in a different sector. Sorry. Totally derailed that in a way.
I think that's great. I think it completely applies. I think I've really enjoyed consulting as a whole, because a lot of my kind of problems have been things that I've kind of just been able to embrace in consulting, right? Like my ability to like show up and say things like suck and just like point like all these things suck and like write it up in a neatly written form and then articulate that well and make a defense and then be able to like walk away and then come back if the organization liked it, right? And offer more assistance. I think that's been beneficial for me, because very similar to like legal, right? No, people are paying me by the hour. Nobody wants me to sit down and give like the C-suite for a company most of the time barely wants to give me 30 minutes of their day. Oftentimes I found myself in the beginning, they were like, can we push past this slide? You're talking too much. And I was like, this is great because I want to be as direct as possible with you. And so I found myself learning that I could switch those things on more often, right? And
it just depends on the audience, right? When you've got the right audience, you can get in and go, all right, let me cut to it, right? They want to hear.
Yeah.
But I imagine in cyber, it's just like law. It's not black and white. It's not binary necessarily.
Correct.
And so you've got to be careful with C-suiters who want to hear yes or no. And you're kind of like, it sucks, but here's how we fix it, right? These potential things. But sometimes it's not just a turn the switch on, easy fix. So it's how do you, when you're coming from a perspective where you are short and to the point, how do you help them not make a rash decision on just that part of it and understand that there might be a bigger picture that they have to actually deal with?
I think one of the biggest things I've had to come back on is if I feel like I'm close, usually it's getting a second set of eyes, right? Like having someone else who's really experienced, getting a second set of eyes and saying, hey, am I giving them something that they could kind of just kind of poke out and say, okay, well, that's the solution right there. Like I want to give them a strategic enough vision that they couldn't just, right? Like for most of the organizations I've worked with, like we don't necessarily name people or like generally a specific department unless it's bad enough. Because a lot of times an exec will say, who was that, right? Like they'll stop a pen test debrief and say, who was that did that? Sorry, we didn't keep track. We have a policy not to, because we don't want you to just go fire that person, because that's not the answer. And so it's being very objective about what happened and just saying like, this is the issue, and attempting to do a systemic analysis as best as we can with the resources we have available. And as much as they're willing to be upfront with us, right? Because I mean, just like in legal, they can lie to us, and that's as much as we know.
That's right.
And so having that conversation and just saying like, this is what we believe, what the information we've been provided is the issue, but we think you should do some more digging. and kind of always leaving a little bit of that disclaimer at the end if I don't feel confident enough about it, right? Like, I think these things should be looked into more in addition to what my general recommendation is. But I mean, that's probably been the roughest part about the job of being a strategic consultant, right? Like, people come in, and I think it's more often than not, it's like having the emotional intelligence to like read the room than it is to understand what they're asking. To like read between the lines more often than not. And I think that's probably the problem we come back to. I remember like how upset I used to get because I would like sit with outside counsel when I would write reports, and they would rip I remember like one of my first meetings as a consultant, I had a 1-hour call that was derailed by outside counsel because of shall versus shall not versus like will versus like will not. Like, and I was like, I just couldn't understand it. And once I finally went back on like, it doesn't matter, like just do it, and just go back to like this mentality that I used to have of like, just do it, get it over with, and continue moving on, like things were fun. And so I think
it's tough because when you get into like court cases and they start parsing the meaning of words and commas and spaces, you go to the lawyer and just say, look, just tell me what you want it to be at this point, and that makes sense with what the case law is and the jurisdiction, and we'll just move on with the security part.
Yeah.
Without getting in the weeds on it. I mean, they're coming at it from their vernacular and their source of truth, right? Which is the cases, which is the regulations and the laws. And you're coming at it from your source of truth, right? Which are the frameworks and the assessments and understanding the systems and the process and the security and the resilience. And you guys are just speaking different languages. Mm-hmm. Even though it's the same word, it has a very different meaning in your context versus their context.
Yeah,
and so,
absolutely.
Just like we talked about earlier, right? Where people may not understand what you're saying, even though you're being just straightforward. You're like, what's wrong with what I'm saying and how I'm saying it? Same thing when you're dealing with legal counsel, when you're dealing with financial advisors, with C-suiters. We might all be talking about the same thing, but we're not saying it the same way. And so the communication stuff crosses quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, life lessons for all of us.
Being able to navigate that stuff, I think is probably, as you're saying, Jose, as I plod along in my years in the industry, I go back to, and you've heard me say this a lot, we've been homies for a bit, right? The tech is easy, the people are hard. I've said that, and it keeps coming back, and it's really, it's true, where communication begins at the ear of the listener. You have to be spot on and see how it lands and be able to tap dance a little bit, or add a little bit more heft or direct or gravitas if you need to. Take some off if it's landing weird. Knowing the audience. Meanwhile, we're all still trying to, erstwhile you would think, drive the mission forward. Protect, enable, hold down what you need to hold down. So I think understanding that folks from your background, with that military background, have that already in spades, even if they can't maybe put it onto in a nice resume type format, but having the appreciation there. Because I got to say, you mentioned the Air Force person, right? In my organization, that's our CISO. I'll say it. And I love what that brings to the table and how he's able to be direct, but be calm, but be empathetic, and just all that mixes and be what he needs to be as a leader for that situation in order to then drive my organization's goals and protect what needs protecting. But I just couldn't imagine looking at a background like his or like yours or other veterans and going, nah. But I see it though. I see the LinkedIn post where they go, you don't have experience. Are you kidding me? I don't understand. Yeah. I can't parse that, man.
I think people have a hard time looking at it and translating it. It's either people have a hard time looking at it and translating it. Yeah. People have a hard time looking at it and believing it, or people have a hard time looking at it and saying, where do I put this person in my organization that makes sense, right? Because I will say there are some people who've had bad experiences with veterans, like from things I've heard based off of something I was told by somebody a couple of years back, is that a reason some veterans will fail is because you have so many people who are mission oriented. And that's why they do so well in the military, right? Because they have something that they can work towards and they're part of like something that's greater than them. And then they leave and then they can't find that in the civilian world. And that ends up being a really, really big problem. And so like on the personal side of things, like I'm like teetering between possibly leaving the military, and it might not be my choice because of medical issues that I have. And so that's like something that I have had to come to terms with, and has been like a conversation in my life between my family and like medical professional, like that, like my doctor. And it's just like, dude, how can I not, and it's like just having to come to terms with like, I'm just a reservist at this point, but it's like having to look back on my career and not being able to do it anymore, or like go to those people, or like have the best of both worlds where I could next year choose a deployment where I could go work with my homies and like do the cool stuff that we like doing. And then that could be taken away from me. And then I'm like, dang, I can't imagine if I was still doing this full time. That would suck even more for me. And so it's something I've struggled with, like having a way to do that. And so I don't know, like, I think the organization that I work for does really good work, and we work with like some really good organizations, and I've just had to find it on my own, right? With like trying to get involved. I'm trying to like find boards that I can work with, or like trying to find teaching opportunities that I can teach with. I volunteer a ton with cybersecurity. I'm like, these are things I just do on my own to like try to find purpose. I do like work with like the Cyber Peace Institute, right? So like I could go out and like do like free GRC type work for nonprofit organizations and NGOs. And like that helps me feel like I'm doing something for somebody else. And that's like outside of my primary job. Like I get fulfillment and like obviously the financial fulfillment from what I do full time, but I do go out and search for those things. And like that's what I really encourage people to do, because I run into vets all the time who are like, dude, yeah, sure, I'm paying the bills, but like, I really miss doing the things with the dudes, or like, I really miss knowing that I have impact, right? Like, because sometimes I don't know that I have, like, there's nothing I could point to and say, like, I did that, because sometimes you're just a program manager, pushing things along, just a program manager, right? Like, not that that's what you are, but that's how you feel. I think
that's an excellent point. I mean, I think it's funny, whether you're military or not, I think that's something that helps all of us in the world that we're living in, that sometimes you got to do the job because it's the job, but you find your fulfillment elsewhere in different things. Sometimes you're, and I don't want to say just a job, right? Like you said, just a programmer manager is not just a program manager, but it may feel like that for that person, right? As they're doing it for whatever reason. And you find those other things that give your life value and meaning and importance for you, whether it's family, whether it's volunteering, whether it's being further in the cyber community or what have you, whether it's art, walks in nature, whatever it is, it's finding that extra piece for your own mental health and to make your heart happy, right? And make you happy as you go through it. So, I think we were all fed a lot of stuff when we were younger of your job. You never work a day in your life if you love what you do. You can still love what you do and really not have that same fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
They may be two very different things. And so if we all go in believing there's only one way to do it and one answer, and it's going to be your end all be all, we're all going to be very unhappy with the fact that I got to pay my bills and I've got to do different things. And I may have to work in places that get me most of the way there, but not all the way there, and have to supplement whatever that is to make the rest of me feel the way that I want to feel, if that makes sense. I mean, you said it better than I did, but I think that's just such a great point, right? You find those extra pieces. And you'd mentioned, and I know we're getting towards, we're at an hour. So I want to help wrap this up with you, but you had mentioned the networking piece being really hard. But at the same time, you talked about how you went out and you were looking for teaching opportunities, and you are working with Cyber Peace and some of these other things. So funny enough, you're already kind of networking without even, you know what I mean? You're hard. I think you're hard on yourself, because we all are, right? We're all we're all our own worst critics in life. I am the same with myself all the time. Omar can tell you that.
Same here.
By far, my husband gets annoyed. He says, like, stop being a critic on yourself. But we're all human, right? But you're obviously doing things that actually involve some level of networking. And I think people don't realize that either, right? When they're out there and they're doing those things, it's always an opportunity to network. It doesn't mean you just have to go to the group meeting, or you just have to go to that thing. There could be outside areas where you go, oh, I met this person and we had this lovely conversation. And next thing you know, they're like, hey, by the way, we're looking for this, that, and the other, and maybe you might be interested. Doesn't even have to be a related thing. Could be your church, or if you're in a religious institution, it could be your grocery store.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of being like an introvert and extrovert, right? Kind of like in that ambivert territory where like I'd much rather not be in large groups and have conversations. And so I've had to be very purposeful with creating a system for networking. And so a large part of it, my general philosophy in life is like allowing my work to speak for itself. So I'm like very big on like portfolios and volunteering and like putting hard work out and allowing like the products that I'm putting out have my name attached to them, and then people come to that, right? And then say like, oh, you're that guy who did this thing. Well, like, dude, I'm happy. Like, can we work on these things together? And then I'm more than happy to like move towards a shared vision with people if I know that like that's kind of what we're going towards, right? Like I feel like it comes off wrong sometimes, right? But like I don't network for the sake of networking. Like I feel like some people do it just for like the sake of knowing that, like saying that they know 1,000 people. I just like, I think it's great to know people with similar interests, but I unfortunately don't like having a million conversations all the time. And I'm terrible about getting back to people. I try my best. I really do. And I think the second thing that I've had to come to learn to do, also kind of the friendliest Canadian I've ever met, thing I learned from him is I think as an industry, networking in general, kind of depend too much on what we can get from other people, like too much transactional things, right? And I think we get turned away from people. And so it's funny because we've got like Chris Voss who wrote Never Split the Difference. I've seen like some of the things he's written about, like mirroring and the way you ask people questions. And I think it's really interesting because he's put a name to a lot of the things. But then I talked to guys like Santosh, is the most friendliest Canadian I've ever met, who over the course of his 25, 26-year career has just developed how he talks to people. And for him, it's when you go to networking events, stop talking about your industry so much. Look at someone in the eyes and ask them what they love about what they do. Ask them about their families, ask them about their hobbies, ask them about their pets, ask them about their passion projects. You're probably going to find something that you have in common with them. And if you don't, he's like, see if they like whiskey. Maybe you like whiskey. Find some, like he's like, find some. There's gonna be something, man. Yeah. And he's like, and if there's not, then maybe it's time to leave.
Maybe it's time to keep moving. I can hear it in his voice.
Yeah. And I think that's what's helped me because like I said, just like with the social aspect of things, like LinkedIn is the only social presence I have. So I have a hard time. Like I'm not on social media because I have a hard time with like the fake front people put on social media. Right. And so I have a hard time with networking events because I feel like people aren't who they normally are. Right? Like they have like a conference version of themselves and I'm just the same raggedy t-shirt wearing guy all the time. Like it's just who I am.
There's a benefit to that specifically because I am very similar to you. I like people, but I get drained by it. And so I have that ambi thing going on. I can be very social, but I'm like, oh yeah, I need 3 days to recover from that. Like a friend literally sent me that meme of here I am hiding in my little blanket because I can't come out to play anymore. But if I go to those big events, I'm like you, I am not in it to collect every business card in the room. And I will not be the first one to be like whipping out my business card everywhere. I don't need to collect business cards in my drawer, right? I'd rather make meaningful relationships. And so my strategy is if I feel a little awkward and out of place, someone else does too. And I often go find that person. I don't look for the biggest name in the room. If there is a reason you're there and you're strategically, oh, I need to meet this person, then go do what you got to do, right? If you know that's a thing. But if you're just at a conference and you're like, I don't know who anybody is, I honestly go find the person hiding in the corner who's very uncomfortable. Hey, me too. And we have a conversation and we start from that of like, well, what brought you here and what are you looking to get out of it? And what do you enjoy? Right. And we talk about pets and we talk about anything other than, oh, my job defines me. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing is finding what makes you you. And let's have a conversation. And whether it's whiskey or nature, right. There's usually something you can find.
Yeah.
To relate to at a human level. Right. And you just never know who that person is you're talking to. But yeah, I don't like charging into the middle of the circle and here, everybody take a card. I'm very similar to you in that regard of like,
it's off-putting.
It truly is. You see that
a lot.
It definitely happens. Folks come in there and I think it's also because I love how you covered it, Jose, and you mentioned it as well, Allison, the networking can be this way that we're talking about. It's not, and a lot of those entry level or those career transitioning services or resources say network. And then that's the vision folks have in their head. And either it turns them off from networking completely, or they become one of those people who walks in and is just like ninja starring their business cards to people. And it's like, and what happens when somebody's throwing something at you? I naturally go, oh, wait, hold on. Like, it's just really, like you said, it's off-putting. Just go in and, shoot the bull. Find something, maybe make a funny joke about this lighting or whatever. You can bond off of that. And it could be the smallest thing. And then you hit it off. You've broken the ice there. And it's also not selling. You're not jamming stuff down people's gullets there. And I think you become a bit more of like a trusted resource there. Cause I'm the same as you two. If I go to one of those things, I will occasionally but it has to be around something cool that I want to go anyway. But then I'll be right. My wife knows she'll give me an hour. When I come back off the train, she'll go, here's some food or here's a warm beverage. And then I'll let you start talking.
Here's your support blanket.
I can tell you got a little shell shock, she calls it, right? I'm just,
one thing that also helps in that environment, and this goes back to something Jose said as well, which is everybody looks at it as a transaction of what can you do for me? If you approach it from, well, maybe I can do something for them, and you have the conversation of like, what are you looking for? I'm happy to help, right? If there's something, a connection like, oh, you're looking for this, that, and the other. You know what? I just met this person and they're doing X, Y, or Z. Or you know what? I know these people in this industry. Oh, you're looking for this educational resource. Here's someone you might want to reach out to and those types of things. So I always look at as an opportunity for me to be able to help them on their journey. And if that turns into a trust relationship, great. If it just lets them on their way, you know what? I feel good. I got something they needed and they can move on their way. And so I always approach it more from that side of getting to know the person. Is there something I can offer that can be helpful? It's just good to be that resource as opposed to that I've always been much more of a giver than a taker kind of mentality. And there's, room for both in the world. But I think if you approach networking in that way, you'll find it much more beneficial. And one last point on that, things that people could make friendly over. I've actually made really good connections over food allergies at big events before. This was actually recently where we were sitting there and my food came much later than others due to some food allergies. The table's like, we'll wait for you. And it was a big event that we had to be at for big community event and an award ceremony kind of scenario. And I'm like, no, please eat your food while it's hot. You do not want to wait for this. And the gentleman came up and he's like, no, I understand. I've had food allergies my entire life. I understand how this works and everything else. And that later, funny enough, led to him reaching out and us having a meeting at his educational institution and talking about how we can partner together. And it started on food allergy discussions. So you never know how you're going to connect with another human. And so help destigmatize networking, back to what you both had said, right? Which is that whole idea of it being overwhelming of you have to meet all the people. You don't have to meet all the people. You just need to meet the right people. And you don't know who they are until you become human and you have that engaging conversation. And I always found that one-on-one, like Jose, you and I have never met. I am thrilled to be part of this with you today. And obviously you and Omar have had a relationship and you guys met. As we finish this off, kind of how did you guys get together in the first place? Because I actually don't know.
Teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had taught together. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And I was teaching a class that Omar was more qualified to teach than I was. So.
That's a complete and utter falsehood.
Yeah, I showed up to teaching and they were like, hey, this is your assistant teacher. And I was like, who are you? And he introduced himself and I was like, cool. And I looked him up and I was like, Dr. Sangarima.
That's not...
Oh, dude.
Listen.
All right, man.
Only busted out. I always say this. I only busted that out. I busted that out today because I wrote somebody a recommendation. And that's one of the few times where I get to go. And then I took a second. I was like, that's dope. It's doctor and there's some commas after too. I'm okay. But that's the only time. And so, but I think people get put off slightly when I go, I'll write you a rec. Like it's one of the few times I ever ball out on the titles. Like, let's go. But other than that, it's just not. But meeting Jose and teaching and seeing, you would stay after, right? You would give more time. You were very self-deprecating, very, very humble. But I could tell, I don't know, it's you folks in the Air Force. I don't know what's going on there in the military in general. I don't know what they're feeding you. It's like the cyber knowledge was vast. I could tell that pretty much from the rip, but just also, again, just the way that you were with folks and also the way you were leveling with these folks because I had been part of other teaching situations where the teachers were like, okay, peons, I'm going to give you the sweet knowledge from the mountain. And you were totally not like that, connecting with the students, really impassioned to help them break in. Because I think that was the situation, Jose, wasn't it? It was career transitioners or trying to upskill to maybe get into cyber. And I said, yeah, this is that and I think the dark sense of humor from being in cyber for a bit, I think really drew us. I think we both were, I like to cut to this guy's jib mutually just because we weren't clutching our pearls at some of the dark stuff. We would pitch back and forth. Danielle was also that way too. Shout out to Danielle. Miss her. I hope she's doing great. She was the third part of the teaching tool. But then since then, I think it's just, I've looked up to you. I've excited how your career is going. Very happy to see you succeed. And I know it's mutual. So it's good. That's what networking goes well. Is what I count it on. I count you as a friend at this point, not just
Thank you. Yeah. I agree. Same.
Yeah. So
as we get ready to end this, Jose, any final thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I've got a couple, I think, points I walked in with. I think if there's anything you take away, it's reframe your value if you're looking for something, right? So like as a veteran, as a person, right, your experience is a solution. It's not a story. So like you don't need to explain like this gap that is your military service. Like instead, you need to find a way to quantify the value that you bring. These like skills, I don't know if you have to like see them as a superpower, if you will, as long as you don't let it go to your head, see them as a superpower, translate them, right? No jargon. Don't just list it. Find terms that people use. Things like risk management, strategic planning, logistic optimization, things like that. But like whatever you do, like master the message that you're going to send to people. So like be clear, be collaborative, but be direct, right? So like find those strong suits. The directness is going to be the efficiency. It's one of those things I needed to find. So like be no BS, but have that empathy. Make sure you have context, have corporate buy-in before you become the no BS guy. And if you're going to have like, maybe there's like a challenge, right? So like if you're job searching, be the hardest worker in the room. That's probably been the only thing that's beneficial for me in my career. Like like very few people outwork me. I work late. I'm like English is a second language. Like my entire life, I've just had to work hard and like, I'm okay with that. So like if you're job searching is your next mission. So like approach it with like planning, perseverance that you would a mission. So like move with confidence. You have the skills, you have the expertise, like just keep going, reach out and like fight the good fight. I think that's probably it.
I think that is a great message and a great place to end it.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Thanks for having me.
Jose, it has been a pleasure. I'm honored to meet you and be part of this with you today. And Omar, it is always a pleasure.
It's always, I have, this industry has gifted me with meeting some pretty awesome people, two of which I'm talking to right now, and very privileged to know you guys. So thanks for hopping on, Jose. Thanks as always, Allison. And please, gently, if you would, folks that are listening, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, give a comment, do something, right? You don't have to mash it. If you want to, that's fine. It's big and red on certain platforms. Go nuts. But please, also, we're very religious about answering commentary and whatnot. So if there's anything you want to hear more about, if you want to reach out, chat with Jose a little bit.
Drop a comment, say I sucked.
That's if you do, I'll find you. At that point it's OSINT time, and we're gonna figure a couple things out. Drop a pin. We must check this, okay? Just to honor my UFC folks on Saturday. But please reach out, let us know what you want to hear more about, and it's a pleasure sitting with y'all. So thanks for hopping on.
Thank you.
Thanks.